What age is too old to begin ministry? Or when is it appropriate to say, I'm not qualified to go on some kind of mission that I am convicted or that I see a need of around me? It's an interesting question, and only you can answer that, really. In today's adult Bible story series, and probably one more in the following week, we're going to look at Moses, and specifically Moses at the burning bush. Maybe one of the most famous examples of Moses. Probably there's a lot of famous Bible stories with Moses in it. Of course, before Pharaoh, and then at the Red Sea, and water at the rock, and so many places. The Ten Commandments, on and on. Moses had a very full and interesting life, and we get a lot of Moses events recorded for us to study. Unlike, say, heroes like Elijah, where we have just a few chapters, we have several whole books to look at Moses' life and look at examples from. With that said, though, nearly all of the information we have about Moses' testimony and his mission, his work, and indeed his life comes from the final third of his life. You see, when we pick up with him in Exodus chapter 3, now the beginning two chapters are about Moses as well, when he's a baby and when he's a little bit older. But when we pick up with him in chapter 3 all the way through the end of Deuteronomy, when Moses dies, that's the next the next 4 books. Moses is already 80 years old at the beginning of that story. And so Moses has already spent 2/3 of his life when we really start to learn more about him and when he first enters into God's mission. And I think there's some interesting lessons for all of us to learn, maybe about ministry, about serving God, about faithfulness, about courage, and things of that nature. Instead of starting in Exodus 3, which is where we will be in a moment, I encourage you to open your Bible, if you're willing, and turn to Acts chapter 7 in the New Testament. We get some interesting information in Acts chapter 7 in the middle of Stephen's speech or defense to the Jewish elders and Pharisees right before his murder and execution. But in his defense speech, he tells really most of the Jewish history and gives a little bit of commentary on it. And he draws some lessons which they don't appreciate, but which are true nonetheless. But what we're just going to jump in and see is just a couple of verses, beginning in verse 22. We'll just start at verse 20. It's hard to start in the middle of a story. It was at this time that Moses was born, and he was lovely in the sight of God. Not his mother, I'm sure he was, but he's lovely in the sight of God. And he was nurtured 3 months in his father's home. And after he had been set outside, Pharaoh's daughter took him away and nurtured him as her own son. And as you'd expect for a prince of Egypt, look at verse 22. Moses was educated in all the learning of the Egyptians, and he was a man of power in words and deeds. But when he was approaching the age of 40, it entered his mind to visit his brethren, the sons of Israel. And when he saw one of them being treated unjustly, he defended him and took vengeance for the oppressed by striking down the Egyptian. And he supposed that his brethren understood that God was granting them deliverance through him, but they did not understand. And the next couple of verses tell us about how he goes and sees one of those being injured the next day, and they're fighting one another. And he tries to break up the fight, and they ask, are you going to kill me like you killed the Egyptian? And Moses runs. And he runs away to the middle of the desert, to the land of Midian, and he ends up starting a new life. He gets married, he has some children, and he stays there for the next 40 years, herding sheep and goats and whatever else he herds in the desert. But did you notice a couple of those things that came up in the story of Moses? We know some things. I'm turning to Exodus 3, if you want to turn there. What did we see in Acts chapter 7? What insights did we see? that Moses from birth was beautiful in God's sight. I'm sure every baby is, but God was taking special interest in him. 2, that from childhood he was nurtured and brought up as a prince of Egypt. Now, this is not news to you. If you're younger, you've even seen the cartoon, The Prince of Egypt. I think it gets some of the spirit, as a tangent, some of the spirit of the story right, but it has some problems. It does have some problems, but it's a good movie nonetheless. But he's brought up as a prince of Egypt. And you notice the information we received. He received all their learning. Now, this is Egypt. This is the center of the ancient world, the mighty empire, the center of learning and education and art and artistry and all the like. And he receives all that as being brought up in the royal palace, as the consorts and the companions of kings and nobles and generals and such. He learns, I'm sure, military strategy. He says he's mighty in deeds, that he does things in his first 40 years of life, as you would expect growing up in the royal household. I'm sure he didn't just sit around on a cushion all day. That doesn't sound like the Moses we know later. But he also says he's mighty in words as well as deeds. That's going to be coming back later. But then he goes to Midian. He flees. He runs away to Midian. And he stays there 40 years. And why does he flee? Because he thought he could be a deliverer for his people. You see, he knows he's an Israelite. He knows that. And he knows his brethren are oppressed in Egypt. And when he sees their oppression, he takes vengeance and he slays the Egyptian. And it's not after he slays him that he runs. It's the next day. It appears that he thinks in his own mind he can be the deliverer to deliver his people from Pharaoh's hand, from the Egyptians' hand. And why would he not be? I mean, he's in a perfect place, is he not? He's a prince of Egypt. He knows the Egyptians. He knows their ways. He knows their culture. He can use that against them. He's gained all this knowledge. He's mighty in words and deeds. He can be the perfect general. He can be the perfect leader to lead Israel free. But he sees that's not going to work, and he flees, and he runs away. And he spends the next 40 years in the desert, has a family, grows old, you might say, never having realized his true purpose, if you will. I don't think. I'm not sure he's satisfied, knowing his people are in bondage while he lives as a nomad in the desert. And this is where we find him in Exodus chapter 3. Now Moses was pasturing the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, yet the bush was not consumed. And so Moses said, I must turn aside now and see this marvelous sight, while the bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. He said, Do not come near here. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. He said also, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Then Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. And who wouldn't be? Who wouldn't be afraid to look at God? The Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have given heed to their cry because of their taskmasters, for I am aware of their sufferings. So I have come down to deliver them from the power of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from that land to a good and spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite. Now behold, the cry of the sons of Israel has come to me. Furthermore, I have seen the oppression with which the Egyptians are oppressing them. Therefore, because God has come down, God is aware, God has seen, God has taken pity, and God has purposed to free them and give them the land he promised Abraham he would. Therefore, come now, and I will send you to Pharaoh, so that you may bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. Moses just got a mission. He just got a commission. God just came to him and said, I hear you. I'm here. I'm present. I have seen, and I'm remembering my covenant promises I made to Abraham. He also told Abraham back in Genesis 15 that his children would be enslaved for 400 years. Everything God has promised Abraham has been true thus far, and now he's ready. The time is right for the Israelites to be set free, and he has chosen Moses to be the man, to be his man, to lead in this time. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? Who am I? Well, who are you, Moses? Aren't you the one who's the prince of Egypt? Aren't you the one rescued from the Nile? Aren't you mighty in word and deed? Aren't you the one you used to think you could deliver the people? Now is the time, Moses. Moses is going to come up with just about every excuse he can to not go set his own brothers free. You think, wow, is this the hero of our book, Moses? Who doesn't want to go because he's scared to set his own brothers and sisters free? And this is apparently who he is. Verse 12 is where we're at. God said, certainly I will be with you, and this shall be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God at this mountain. That's going to be the sign that God is with them. He will bring them back to this very place, and they'll worship him there. All the people will come out. Then Moses said to God, behold, I am going to the sons of Israel, and I'll say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. Now they may say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent me to you. Or I exist. It's from this point forth, it's going to be the covenant name of God for Israel. You'll see it in your Bible with all capitalized Lord, Lord. And that's referring to the Hebrew word I am. I exist. I am. I am present. God furthermore said to Moses, thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial name to all generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I am indeed concerned about you, and what has been done to you in Egypt. So I said, I will bring you out of that affliction in Egypt to the land of the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite, to a land flowing with milk and honey. They will pay heed to what you say, and you with the elders of Israel will come to the king of Egypt, and you'll say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. So now, please, let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. So he's telling him exactly what's going to happen. So all Moses has to do is follow the plan of God. God says, here's the game plan. You're going to start here. You're going to go talk to these people. They're going to listen to you like they didn't listen before. You're going to go to the king of Egypt. You're going to tell him these things. He won't listen. That's the rest of the chapter. He won't listen, but don't worry. I'll teach him a lesson or two. And then eventually you'll leave Egypt, and you'll even leave with all the money and possessions you can carry, because the Egyptians will give it to you to get rid of you. And that's the plan. Then come back to this mountain and worship me here. You got to be thinking, Moses will be thinking, all right, we got all the ammunition we need. We got all the mission we need. We got everything we need. We got the resources. We got the purpose. We got God behind us. We can go get the people free. But as we see, the first question in chapter 4, and we're going to end here because I don't want the video to run too long and we need a part 2. Chapter 4, verse 1. Moses said, what if they will not believe me or listen to what I say? What if they don't listen to me? What if they don't believe? God just said they would. God just said they would listen. But Moses is not sure. Moses is not sure that they'll believe. So I ask again, and we're going to explore this further in our next thing. Whenever you think of the children's story as it's most often told of Moses and the burning bush, what is it you picture in your mind? Do you picture a, 25-year-old shepherd man with his nice, perfect beard, unlike mine, and his perfect, strong staff in his hand, a hearty, hale shepherd man who's come from Egypt, and he's living the life with his wife and his 2 young kids. And then he sees the burning bush, and he goes up there, and then he heads out to Egypt? Or do you see an 80-year-old man who, out of curiosity, goes up on a mountainside and encounters God himself in the fire? And when God says, "Here I am, I'm sending you forth to the mission which you attempted on your own 40 years ago. Now I'm going to be with you and you'll find success." And he's going to use every excuse he can come with to not go. Is that the burning bush story you remember? Because in my opinion, from what I'm reading, that's the real story. But you think, well, Moses is just he's kind of lame, isn't he? He just doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to do. He seems kind of a downer. Is this going to be the hero of our story? And to keep from ending on a bad note, I want to turn to Deuteronomy 18. Deuteronomy 18. A simple little verse, and we may even come back to it next week, Lord willing. Deuteronomy 18. Because we can't end on such a down note. Because the now much older and wiser, we hope, Moses, says in verse 15 of Deuteronomy 18, "The Lord your God," and he's speaking to the people of Israel in a kind of a public speech, "The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among you, from among your countrymen. You shall listen to him. You shall listen to him. This is according to all that you asked of the Lord your God in Horeb on the day of the assembly, saying, Let me not hear again the voice of the Lord my God. Let me not see this great fire anymore, or we will die. And the Lord said, They have spoken well. I will raise up a prophet from among their countrymen like you, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak them to them all that I command him." What's he saying? Moses, near the end of his life, is saying, in the future, from among your own ranks, from among the people of Israel, God will raise up a prophet like me. Because Jesus is the fulfillment of that promise. From amongst the people, God will raise up the prophet, raise up the one. And he's going to be like Moses. Is he going to be like the Moses who's standing at the burning bush using every excuse to not go on God's mission? No. No, he's going to be like the Moses who's standing here after all he's been through with God at his side, who's powerfully led the people of God out of Egypt and into the wilderness and around in the wilderness and brought them the teachings of God down from the mountain. He's going to be a prophet like Moses. And the transformation from the burning bush to Deuteronomy 18 is powerful beyond description. But it would never happen unless Moses allows himself to be transformed, to change, to step into God's mission for himself. And step into it past retirement age, by the way. So if you think, I've come to Jesus late in life, my mission is just to say thank you, and I'm sorry for all the past things I've done, and I hope I get to heaven. I hope you don't have that attitude, because I know for a fact that whatever age you are, I don't care if you're 10 or 173, if you live that long, God can and will use you in amazing, powerful ways if you just let him. Well, this has been Biblical Musings. We're musing on the burning bush and Moses. I hope you join us next time. We're going to continue in chapter 4. You're welcome to read ahead if you want. But until next time, God bless and get in the Word.